Do you still watch the news? I feel like I have to, because I know that doesn't always work and a lot of stuff I say doesn't make sense, but I really am committed to having what we do here relate to the real world. You know, I want you to walk out of here with something that gives you something to think about on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And when stuff happens in the world that change us, it's important that we acknowledge that here. And so this morning I turned on the news, and you know, Jesus' teachings were all about what people were going through. Jesus just didn't stand behind a pulpit and just talk. He was always with people that needed something. So I turned on the news, and the news this morning was absolutely haunting, because what's happening in parts of the country is just scary. The nurses and doctors and the hospitals that are just taxed to the limit, and things running out of control. And so when I got to church this morning, I was kind of bummed. I said, what do you say in the middle of all that? Even though in our part of the country, there are some things that are going okay. So I opened up the mail, which was late yesterday, and in the mail was a letter from one of our young people. And she's not too far out of college, but she moved to New York, and that's where she works. And there was a check inside, and then a nice note. And I'd like to just read part of it. It's just a couple lines. She said, "Pastor Don, I must say, I don't consider myself to be the most religious person these days, especially in light of what's going on. But what I do believe is the goodness of the human spirit. I believe in being good to others and trying to live in a way that betters our humanity. And so much of my belief system today has been shaped by being with the people of All Saints." I read that and I just went, it just felt so good to hear those words, especially from somebody who grew up here. And I worry about whether or not we even reach young people. But you're young, we reach you, so that's good, right? So it is. And after I read the letter, I looked outside, and I'm not sure if you were around at that moment. The sun was rising over LaGrange Road. At the same time, there was lightning in the sky, all kinds of thunder. It was pouring rain, and it was dark, all at the same time. And I looked at that scene, and it just was symbolic of the way life is today. I mean, in the midst of all that's going on, there's thunder, there's lightning, a storm is raging, and yet somehow in the middle of all that, the sun still shines. In the midst of all that, there are people like Kristen who believe in the goodness of the human spirit, and that the way to deal with what's going on is to show some kindness and goodness to people, one person and one moment at a time. That's all we can do. You know, this last 4.5 months has affected each one of us. Even if your life is still relatively normal, all of us have had to make changes, adjustments, and we all have things that we're worried about. I now have a step-grandson, Peggy's grandson. His name is Jeremy, and he's going to be a junior in high school this year. And last year, he went out for the football team for the first time ever and really did well. And he's so excited because he's slated to be the starting wide receiver on the football team this fall. So he was over here helping me work yesterday morning. And I said, "What's your football schedule next week?" And he kind of got quiet. He said, "Well, we actually don't have practice at all this week." And then he looked at me and he said, "Don, there's not going to be a season this year. I feel it. How can you have to social distance in math class and then go tackle people on Friday night?" He said, "It's not going to happen." And I could see the pain in his eyes because, and you know, let's go back in time. What were the things that were most important to us in junior high and high school? It was maybe trying to make a team, trying to be somebody, and you work hard at it. You have a dream, and it ain't going to happen at least this year. Now, compared to what some people are going through, it's not a big deal. But if you're 16 years old, it's a big deal. It's a part of who you are. I was even thinking about Quentin. And you know, if you know Quentin, Quentin is all about Quentin. But if you know me, I'm all about me. But Quentin doesn't forget anything. And he had his summer planned. March or April, Disney World with Peg's family. And then in June, go see my motorcycle brother that trips up the mountain with his brother. And then after that, going right straight to the furry convention. I mean, can you believe, how much fun is he? And then in August, to cap it all off, we're going to Texas and spend some time at Heartland, which is where he got his start. Every one of those things has been canceled. And even though Q was pretty content to be at home, you could see the pain in his young autistic eyes. But see, that's not the biggest thing either. But see, no matter who you are, there's things that you had, things that you dreamed. And I had one couple that rescheduled their wedding 3 times. And they finally called me and said, Don, we're going to come over Wednesday. Will you marry us? Yes. Because the most important thing was getting married. And yesterday we had a wedding for a mature couple, which means people my age. And they had a nice wedding plan. It was canceled. And so the church yesterday was their backyard. And then Bob Ganeem's buddy, who I've talked about, Danny, I mean, he died right at the beginning of the pandemic. We had a big church funeral plan. Everything closed. Finally had his funeral last night. And the church was his backyard. You know, I've worried and worried and worried and worried about a lot of stuff. But I have learned that the church comes in many shapes and sizes. And the church is shaped like you. It's what happens when you walk out the door. It's how you handle your journey. It's not about attendance. It's about the heart and soul of who we are as God's people. Yes, I worry about you and what you're going through. I worry about our friends in Texas. I worry about Peggy's parents in Florida. I worry about what's happening to the church. But one thing I'll never worry about is the power of kindness when the human spirit and the goodness of God's Spirit collide and come together. I think of my favorite passage, for everything there is a season, and maybe for someone like Jeremy, there may be a football season someday. Amen. If you're able to, please rise for the creed.